Hey, welcome to Film Fanatics. My name is Dan.
My name is Justin.
And I'm Joe.
So this week, Joe is leading all four of our movies on the docket.
Tell them what. Tell them
what. Usually we try to give the synopses to who best fits the movie, and these are all kind of your movies. And, you know, usually we don't have people lead too many, but you yourself admitted you've been slacking a little bit lately, not seeing as many of the movies. Mm-hmm. So you said, you know what, these are all Joe movies. I'll see them all. I'll lead them all. Off to the races. So we have Split, XXX, Return of Xander Cage, The Founder, and Silence. Yeah. All really Joe movies.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
It came up in discussion that potentially I could lead them all, so I will. And we're starting with which one? Split?
Split, let's do first.
All right, Split is basically the new M. Night Shyamalan movie. So this is the newest one since The Visit, and as some of you might know, people are actually saying, wow, it's good. This seems to be the general consensus. So going in, I mean, I saw the trailers for it, and since it was not hiding how corny it was apparently trying to be, I'm like, well, it's going to be terrible, but at least Shyamalan's not hiding it. So, you know, that was my initial interpretation. I had no excitement for this whatsoever, but basically James McAvoy plays this man named Kevin, though we don't hear his name Kevin at first, who apparently has extreme dissociative identity disorder. So he has 23 multiple personalities. He abducts 3 women, young women, high school girls, and the lead one is played by Anna Taylor-Joy, who was in Morgan.
Yeah, she is Morgan.
Plays this young girl named Casey who's got a lot of issues. She's kind of an outsider, and she's not really friends with the other 2 girls that are kidnapped, but they're held in a bunker for some mysterious reason, and they kind of interact with the different personalities that Kevin has. And on the other side, we get to see he has the therapist named Dr. Fletcher, who's played by Betty Buckley. Oh, yeah. You guys know her from anything?
I recognize the name. Which one?
The Happening.
Oh, the evil lady.
Yes, whenever we need crazy old person.
Crazy old. Well, she wasn't quite as crazy this time. She kind of has some, therapy sessions, so we kind of learn a little bit more about him. And so it's kind of this, race against time to try and escape, but also figure out what's going on, what the motivations are, and learn a bit more about him and also Casey's past. So there's a lot going on, and there's also sort of a twist at the end because it's Shyamalan, but it's not even exactly...
It's kind of a cop-out.
It's not really a twist so much. Like, I kept going through the whole thing, like, what is the twist? And there really isn't one throughout, like, 98% of the movie. And then there's more of a... reference kind of inclusion, which I might talk about a little later.
There's a little bit of a twist with the plot itself. A little bit.
Kind of, sort of.
Not
more
really.
So than some movies.
They kind of tell you more in the trailers what's kind of going on. There's sort of a twist, but I wouldn't say it's as blatant as any of his other ones where it's like no huge reveal.
Okay.
It's more like, you kind of suspected some things, but there might be a couple tiny twists, but nothing major, I think. Getting the most obvious part of it, James McAvoy, he's a good actor. We all know this, but just in terms of his diversity with the roles that he can handle in this and being able to quite literally change character within a few seconds sometimes, it is just phenomenal. I think that it's kind of interesting how it sort of reflects, I guess, what Shyamalan's going for with this and being kind of scary, but also kind of hammy at the same time, and you can kind of shift between that, and he's able to do both.
And he did that a little bit with The Visit as well.
With The Visit, and
which I know got mixed results, from us, but
this reminded me of The Visit.
Yeah.
Like, I think that if Shyamalan's trying to find finally his style, where he kind of balances the super serious early stuff with the kind of hammier stuff that's become most of his career, kind of what it feels like.
I mean, he's always tried to incorporate wit in some way. I think some were significantly smarter than others, but I mean, he's always made at least some sort of modest attempt at that.
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, I found that this experience was, for me, there were some moments that were rather scary. There is some tension that builds up. I mean, I feel like we see the best of Shyamalan's technical stuff here, like just his camera work, cinematography is great, some of the lighting's really awesome, and some of it's also kind of funny, as often as it is scary, so it's always entertaining at the very least. I'm not sure how much of it's intentional, but I'd imagine most of it is. So if there's a good formula, I think it's there. I really liked Casey's character. I liked the backstory they showed with her. And I think that both her and the parallels with Kevin's character, they kind of try to draw some parallels. And they do touch on some interesting and even kind of deep ideas here. But I don't know if they go quite as far as they could. But there's definitely some weight to it, which is more than most of his movies, which is definitely appreciated. So, getting all that out of the way, The little extra for me. I guess I'll keep it spoiler free, even though the internet all knows now. It's
Is
like
that right?
it's
With a vengeance, yes.
Like I was surprised how. But if you are a fan of Shyamalan at all, or especially his earlier stuff, this is for you. But literally, I was on YouTube today, and there was literally like, here's this, and this is why because of this. Like, oh well, a lot of people know that now. If you
That's about all we can say.
Spoil the movie,
Yes.
but we'll try not to here. But I will say the tiny little thing at the end, much like kind of everybody else now trying to turn something into a franchise, Shyamalan might be doing that possibly again, much in the vein of, say, a movie like 10 Cloverfield Lane, I think is the closest example. And I will say that I feel like you could have mixed feelings with that, but because it was such a surprise to me, and the way it did slowly build up within that couple minutes, it was kind of awesome. How does it work for the rest of the movie? It kind of does, but part of me kind of wishes it was still its own thing, but it could work. Like I'm like, okay, it almost feels like the whole movie was kind of a roundabout way of saying, oh yeah, it's this thing. But for a fan of that particular film, I did really like that part, and I do hope that something goes with it if it's like a love letter for that. But I've talked enough. What do you guys think about the movie?
Well, I think that to get a character like this to play out, you do need a McAvoy.
The best.
You know, look, I didn't know he had it in him.
No.
I mean, we've seen him do a lot of different types of roles, but never quite this diverse, and never certainly within the same construct of a scene, or like Joe said, sometimes within a few seconds he'll switch from one to the other personality style. Now, they kept touting the 23 personalities, 23 I would have liked to see more than maybe 5.
They do 10, which is still not nearly enough.
Sort of in the video clips, yes, but I mean, in his interaction with the girls, I think probably 4 or 5.
5 generally, yeah.
Yeah. So that might have been nice, but look, the guy does a great job with it.
Yeah.
I think the girls are reasonably solid in this movie. Morgan has got this weirdo look to her that works for these kind of roles. She's got the big buggy eyes, the way they do her hair. It worked very well for her in Morgan. I think it works here as well. She's, like Joe mentioned, sort of the outcast of the group of friends, not really connected with those two. But I like the way they work together. The worst part of the movie is the scene with Shyamalan. I know that he wants to be in all of his movies.
He really does think he's Hitchcock.
Yeah, Hitchcock did it. But sometimes, M. Night, Hitchcock...
You gotta be yourself.
Sometimes Hitchcock just...
showed up.
Drove by in a car. He
Yes.
didn't have a scene. Or Joe mentioned last night off the air about Signs, how he had a plot point. That's like, here... It's a pretty throwaway scene.
That's virtually nothing.
It imparts a little bit of information, but it's not anything we could have figured out.
Yes.
So, yeah, pretty lame with that. The twist of everything, I think, is decent. It kind of works itself out. As for the credits sequence twist, I'm fine with it. It was sort of spoiled for me, so I'm not exactly sure what I was expecting from it, but I knew something had to be coming in regards to that. So, it was fine. I definitely think it's better than The Visit. I would say it's probably Knight's best in, I don't know, since at least Signs. I mean, really, those ones after Signs...
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that.
I mean, I know there's a couple I didn't see. I didn't see Lady in the Water. The Happening, I know, is terrible. Didn't see that. There was another major one I missed. I finally did see Airbender.
Yeah,
we ran it on the show for Guilty Pleasure. Ha ha. The joke was on us.
Clearly.
After Earth is terrible. So, yeah, I mean, I think if the trajectory as of late is The Visit and this, I mean, I'm definitely okay with that.
So, I guess to kick this one off, we'll come back to 2 points. The first is, as I mentioned in the season finale for season 4, disabilities don't matter to Hollywood. I still vehemently stand on this point after having the entire grouping lovingly labeled as rapists, cold assassins, And my personal favorite, stoic comic relief characters that are meant to be bullied and harassed by the normal characters. Lovely Hollywood. Truly, truly lovely. Aside from the fact that the psychology is embarrassingly inaccurate, I really gotta say, without McAvoy, this movie would be a disaster. This movie would be a bona fide disaster. He brings so much energy to the characters, though I feel like half the time it's Shyamalan realizing that and just throwing him at every possible opportunity to try and hide the fact that his script is unbelievably flimsy. Which brings me to point 2. As we may have noted when we reviewed The Visit, Shyamalan is a has-been. I also stand on this. He really vehemently believes that he's the next Hitchcock. He is wrong. I'm sorry. You had a good run. If you were a little bit more consistent, you might have been. But I'm sorry. You weren't Hitchcock. You never will be. And that's really where this movie suffers so much. Some of the dialogue in the first, I'm going to say, hour is awful. Easily some of the worst stuff I've heard in recent years. The teenagers sound like a tired old man trying to figure out how millennials talk. Just everyone doesn't feel like a legitimate character. I'll give him a little bit of credit for the fact that the story does build on itself, and if you can get past this super, super rough first hour, it's better than most of the stuff he's churned out, but given the fact that apparently Kevin was supposed to be in a earlier film, without giving spoilers, it makes you wonder what would this movie have been like if Shyamalan had maybe tackled this 5-6 years before Split came into recent years. But I mean, some of the cinematography's okay. McAvoy does a legitimately good job. Morgan is bad. Morgan is really, really bad. Just doesn't even remotely work, and it's easily some of the worst makeup I've seen.
Well, wait. I just wanted to ask one thing, Justin, because I know we kind of brought the point a lot, like kind of jokingly about like the whole, hang up the hat thing. But Shyamalan, you say he's a has-been, but you usually don't tell him to hang up his hat. It sounds like after everything.
I mean, problem number 1 is he needs to get over the fact that he thinks he's the next Hitchcock. There's been so many people who have tried to attempt that. Some people have come really close. Shyamalan, I think if he had been more consistent as he was starting, I think he could have gotten there. But that time has passed. It's not going to happen. So instead of trying to be the next Hitchcock, be the first M. Night Shyamalan.
He was.
I don't think he is trying to be Hitchcock, aside from trying to insert himself in every movie. Listen, he has said
title sequence.
He has said in many interviews that he felt real saddled with that whole do a twist thing from the studios after those first couple films. That's why he veered off into other territory. All of those movies were terrible.
It's true.
So Blumhouse, the go-to for horror these days and thrillers, said, "Look,
I think
we're gonna give you $5 million or whatever." Do what you do best. Give us something with a twist. It's the people are telling him this is what we want from your movies, from your scripts. So personally, I don't think he is trying to be anything. I think he was saddled with this because he wrote a brilliant movie in The Sixth Sense, and it sort of followed him his whole career.
So you're arguing he essentially is getting directorially typecast.
Yes, that's why he was trying to branch out. But like you mentioned correctly, some of the worst movies of the last decade, After Earth and Airbender, are terrible movies.
And yet both, strangely enough, do not have a twist.
Yeah. That's my point. The studios wanted him to branch out and not do his thing. That's my point.
That's fair.
So Blumhouse said, no. You're best at doing the twist. Do it, monkey. And so he does it.
Yeah.
And so look, I think you're being ridiculously harsh on him. Now, if you didn't like this movie, that's all right. I know you didn't like The Visit either. But to say that he, thinks he's bigger than life and wants to be Hitchcock, I think that's something he was saddled with.
I have to respectfully disagree with that.
That's
in
fine.
In terms of his style, in terms of the fact that he's trying to do the cameo thing, the title sequence, which is pretty much Psycho on steroids.
He is a big fan of Hitchcock.
I'm sorry.
Who isn't?
This is pretty much a love letter to Hitchcock.
Well, to be fair, I mean, I guess it's sort of become a Shyamalan discussion. With The Sixth Sense, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. no matter how much you make fun of it, people generally agree that's a really good movie. And
Yes.
that was his,
No, it is.
and that was his first movie. It was hard for him to really go past what is considered to be like one of the best of the twist thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
If you
maybe.
get nominated for Best Picture on your first time out,
I mean, think
Props.
about
that's pretty...
Genuine props.
So that's maybe, he was maybe kind of a one-hit wonder in that sense, maybe. But to be fair, he started higher than most directors ever do. So
And very young, too.
very young. Maybe, I don't know.
In terms of the psychology of this movie,
It's
when we meet the Beast, the 24th personality...
Which is technically 25th, but I digress.
They keep saying he has 23. The 24th is about to be unleashed, right?
original. Yeah, they do.
That's
They do.
that's the tagline.
That's true. But I guess they don't
So,
include.
I was going to
actual
say there's also
Kevin.
said individual.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever.
Yes.
But the point is, I don't think this movie is going for hard
Science.
science fact.
It is science
So,
fiction, basically.
Yeah. I understand your issues with it, but I mean...
I've heard that a little bit.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could definitely see it. Like, I'm looking at the movie and I'm like, okay, that's definitely wrong. But it's definitely not the first movie
this
to
is
take
not
liberty with
in
pseudoscience.
sort of the real world.
It isn't.
and
You're
especially-
clearly
but-
able to tell that he's trying to
Yes.
draw from psychological concepts like dissociative identity disorder, which is a thing.
That's true.
But he sensationalizes it so royally it becomes a joke.
That is true.
It's like, did you just hear a concept and run with it?
That's probably what he did, and a lot of people do that, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But even in the context of the whole thing with the little button end there at the end, it isn't supposed to be exactly what it is implied to be originally. So that kind
No,
of
but
makes
it's still technically a psychological thriller. Keyword there being psychological, Joe.
psychological, but it's also, by definition, with the ending, it's science fiction. I mean, it just
There's
is.
definitely
Which-
definite room. And
or-
there's also room for suspension of disbelief.
and
There's-
supernatural, too.
But when the bar is being set,
All right.
I mean, you've got to fit the politic.
No, I can understand your frustration, but I guess in some of those movies we talked about where it's come up, maybe it is trying to be apologetic with the whole disability concept, but is it inherently wrong?
What do you mean by apologetic? I'm not trying to call you out here. I'm just curious.
by the producers of these films? You didn't let me finish.
Sorry.
Is that, say, I don't know, like the help me out here, the Ben Affleck movie,
The accountant?
The Accountant, and other things like that, where he's got some kind of disability, but they managed to enhance it, saying that he can do great things with this, or he can use that to his advantage. How is that bad? I mean,
That was always my
Okay, well,
argument.
problem number one with The Accountant is, as I mentioned, they pretty much play up the whole, oh, look, he's a cold, lifeless, unfeeling assassin.
Okay.
Almost to the point that it's a punchline.
Okay.
And alongside that, they play up the fact that, oh, look how smart he is with numbers. Ergo, it's literally becoming essentially a superpower.
Okay.
They're sensationalizing the idea of autism equals superpowers, which has been going on since the 80s. It's incredible that Hollywood has learned absolutely nothing.
Is it possible that in an instance like that, though,
Go
he
on.
could be autistic or whatever, and actually also have abilities to be good with numbers? Is that impossible?
I don't think it's impossible, but I think you don't sensationalize it like it's like he's the greatest thing ever because of it.
But he's the hero of the movie.
Yes, but you don't make him a superhero out of it.
Well, I guess I'll try to bring it back to the movie, but with this one in particular, I mean, I think that it was almost just trying to suggest another point of view. Like maybe there's something about the disorder that could show like a positive side of it as well.
Well, please go on.
Well, I mean, obviously his therapist is like, well, okay, this could, potentially unlock different things. Like, for instance, this guy is able to have, 23 different personalities. I mean, and still function somehow. I mean, that's kind of interesting.
Well, and obviously some of the personalities are trying to help,
Some of them are,
including the original person.
and,
Briefly, but yes.
so it's like, it's not necessarily totally demonizing, and it's trying to be complicated.
It's
trying.
It's kind of in that Finding Dory camp where it's kind of a backhanded compliment.
Yeah, a backhanded compliment is a good way to say it, but
Stranger Things is probably in that same camp as well.
yeah, but at least, it's there. I mean, if it wasn't there and it's just like, no, this is the way it is, he's just a horrible monster that happens to have this, and everybody that has this disorder is a serial killer, that would be terrible. I think it's better to sensationalize positively than negatively. I mean, I just think
my argument, if media studies have taught me anything, is that sensationalism in any variety is bad. But
perhaps, but I don't think too many people would walk away from this movie saying, "Oh, this is a terrible thing because of that." I think they're going to say, "Wow, there was a monster inside the guy because it was a supernatural type of movie. He just happened to have."
They keep bringing up the fact, like, "Oh, it's linked to dissociative identity disorder." Great, nice to know that 30%
That's what he had.
He is.
But
okay.
That doesn't mean that your body structure gets manipulated like it does.
Well,
That's
actually,
the science fiction portion.
And there is some
yes, but people are still going to believe that stereotype now.
But I guess the way I looked at it was, it's science fiction. Science fiction always has some grounding in actual science, and they take it to a different direction. Yes, if you get bitten by a radioactive spider, do you get spider powers? No, you die.
Not typical.
But it took a possibility that people didn't know about as much back then. They're still learning about these things. It's supposed to be a fictional story, and that's not the main focus of the movie, really. There's other things going on.
Oh, man, do I not agree with that statement, even remotely.
All right.
But
We have 3 other movies to get to, though. So I think let's just give our grades for Split and move on here.
I enjoyed it. It was a B+.
Okay, it's a B for me. Justin?
C+.
All right. So up next is XXX, The Return of Xander Cage.
Yay! Well, XXX returns, and he is Xander Cage. That's pretty much the movie.
Yeah.
But basically, Xander Cage comes back because, Gibbons is looking for people, and then he's not. Would that be a spoiler? I don't know.
No.
Yeah, it's not. But basically, people get satellites dropped on them. And this time, not only is Xander coming back, he needs help. So he's going to go out, and he's going to find some more extreme sports secret agent people to help him. And they're going to fight terrorist Donnie Yen, who wants to drop satellites on the planet. Because he's angry, I guess.
You can clearly tell how...
Yeah, you can tell how
intelligent
this was.
I was going to say.
Yeah, so, okay.
They had over 10 years to work on this, people.
As Justin is indicating, and he's right, by my synopsis, the plot of this movie is not very important. It's practically non-existent.
To be fair, though, in their defense, the first one wasn't exactly War and Peace either. But
that is true, but...
It was a Joe guilty pleasure.
It was.
A guilty pleasure.
It was. It's a fun movie.
It is fun, but I'll even go back to that. With some history there being one of the guilty pleasures I brought to the show. I really do like XXX. And apparently it's not that bad of a movie, because you guys really liked it.
Yeah.
And Roger Ebert gave it like 3.5 stars. So, apparently people like XXX for what it is. And we'll get back to that. With this one, that is essentially the plot. It's kind of ironic because we live in this day and age where studios get a lot more input from fans. Much more easier through social media and everything. It's just much more accessible. So the possibility of getting an old film brought back, getting a franchise going, it's much more possible now, for better or worse. Now, I've often kind of joked about Xander Cage 3 happening, but then it became a reality.
It did.
And this movie is for me.
Well, if one person listens to his fans, it's Vin.
And that's...
that's why the franchise has succeeded so much.
That's true. And that's one reason why I really like Vin Diesel. He does seem to want to give his fans what they want.
Fan base, I can get behind that.
I'll get behind that. And so, this movie does feel like, oddly enough, XXX fan service. Like, I didn't think there was enough of a fan base for this to be a cult movie. But as I found out, seeing the movie with my friends, there are other people that did like XXX. Maybe not a huge...
Exist.
They do exist, and I'm glad they do. Because Now, the real question is, though, if you go see this movie, will you be satisfied with what you get? Well, on one hand, does it give you what XXX is? Yes and no. It brings Vin Diesel. It brings some other people who are having fun and kind of game. It brings over-the-top action and stunt work. These are things that were part of the XXX formula. So when you hear XXX, yeah, that was the draw. On the surface. But when I compare the two, I'm like, I'm having a different experience with this movie versus the original. What could it be? Well, believe it or not, the first movie, as cheesy as it was, actually had a decent, solid story and characters that I knew and cared about and weren't one-dimensional caricatures. Wow, so maybe...
One-dimensional might be a choice word, but...
Well, if you put these two characters aside, side by side, there's a little more in the first one. It just can't be argued.
There is.
It can't be argued. Even Vin Diesel himself, Xander Cage's character is, less energetic. Maybe he's too old for it now. Possibly. But then again, that's why they have other cast members, much like Expendables 3.
Yeah.
Think about this, though. If they're modeling something off Expendables 3, you go to Expendables to see all these old action stars be
Plus
awesome.
Grammar.
Yeah.
Plus grammar. And instead you bring in people that are MMA or people
Rousey.
we don't know, Ronda Rousey.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not what you want to see. And I think this movie kind of suffers from that. It also suffers from, honestly, yes, there is less of a story. And the biggest central part of the story was you had villains. You know who they were, what they wanted, and why they were doing what they were doing. That held the meat together. You knew what the plan was. But in this movie, the villain of the movie switches 3 different times. There were 3 acts, and one of them's literally like 15 minutes long.
Pretty much,
There are 3 villains. You don't know what they're doing, why they're doing it. All this is just an excuse for people to go from place to place, one-liners, action. And the people are having fun, and that's kind of fun, I guess. But without the story and without slightly better characters, there is something missing from the original one. So I had fun watching it, but I think the first one is way better, for sure. What do you guys think?
Justin, did you find that?
It very much is in the too little too late camp, but what I think worked about the first movie is the fact that it was completely off the wall and insane and pretty much anti-James Bond, which was its more or less entire marketing play, and it worked. Mm-hmm. The problem with XXX, The Return of Xander Cage, is it's way, way, way too into the joke. There's an art to meta-humor. You can be self-conscious. The first movie capitalized on that. Like, okay, this is ridiculous, this makes no sense. But the fact that this movie's trying to do the, like, Suicide Squad profile thing, I will happily argue it does it more effectively than Suicide Squad does. But, like, they try and throw in these, like, little quirky tidbits, like, oh, yes, this clearly doesn't make any sense. Or, look, oh, yes, I found a hero. You clearly will become a hero in the sign of danger. It's like, you turned what was already more or less a cartoon, but a pretty darn entertaining cartoon, into an annoying cartoon.
That's true.
Alongside that, Xander is nowhere near as likable as he was in the last one, as well as the entire XXX crew.
Not the Hound? Wasn't likable?
Not especially, no. I do have to say I found it thoroughly entertaining that
I liked him.
that the movie does pass the Bechdel test thanks to one idiotic scene, but
Nice.
but for the most part, the action, if you can get past some of the appallingly bad CGI at times, is actually kind of engaging. It moves quickly.
It's true.
One cameo works much better than I thought it was going to.
Yeah, I agree. I really did.
I didn't hate this movie. It was sort of in that I'm not mad, I'm disappointed camp.
I kind of agree with that. But maybe a little less so.
I had sort of a different take on it. I think I liked it the most.
Wow.
Right.
Well, first of all, you say too little too late, but for me, I only saw the first one 2 years ago. So for me,
So
this
right on
is
schedule.
this is right on sequel schedule for me. And I missed the second one entirely, although
That's okay.
I sort of
That's okay.
knew I knew
You
Vin
know
wasn't in
everything you
it.
need
I
to
know
know.
Q was, whatever. I actually did see like the last half hour of it at a drive-in because it was the first one of the double feature, and we were like, we don't care about that, so we'll go late.
Yeah.
But we were talking the whole time, not paying attention. But so I really kind of enjoyed this movie. Now, Joe, you do point out a lot of things that either I hadn't thought about or didn't really concern me. The multiple villain thing is an issue, but I don't know, everybody kind of being one-dimensional. I sort of felt that the first XXX was kind of that way. So that didn't bother me at all.
Or how about this? You know what? I guess Xander Cage is not particularly complicated, but I think Diesel was able to give him enough dynamic through the performance and his interactions with other people. These people are supposed to have quirky personalities.
He's amusing.
He is amusing. But their gimmick is all they are. That's the thing. I don't really know any of these people. I know Xander Cage a little more.
I guess that's true, but they're all XXXs, so I guess you're supposed to just assume they have a checkered history and whatever.
Yeah.
I like the driver guy. He was funny. I love Ruby Rose. Mm-hmm. She's in Orange is the New Black. I'm a fan of hers. The girl, Nina Dobrev, I don't really like her.
Could take or leave.
Yeah, I could take her or leave her in general. In this specifically, the F me eyes that she gives him the whole movie are a little bit... That grows a little bit old. Donnie Yen, I really enjoyed. I admit, we don't know. We don't know his motivation. We don't know anything. But I can't deny that those fight scenes are great.
They're fantastic.
One major flaw I felt that neither of you mentioned was the stunt double for Vin Diesel. What
do you mean?
Terrible.
Really apparent, yeah.
It's terrible. And that's not something I usually even notice, but I definitely noticed it here. I mean, it's hard to be as jacked as Vin.
Yeah.
So when you can shoot people from different angles and everything, but it's like you can tell it's not Vin. I
assume you're referring mostly to the opening stunt.
And there was one in the middle as well that was it was like a highway chase.
Yep.
As well.
No, that's right.
Yeah. So I had a lot of fun with this movie, whilst acknowledging that it's not really a good movie.
Not especially.
So the guilty pleasure label fits. Certainly, I can see why the first one was for you, Joe.
Yeah. But I feel like the first one was just more coherent.
It is. No, the first one's a better movie. But I had a lot of fun watching this.
I did too.
Yeah.
That's true.
There's a lot of really cool action sequences. I think the characters, while not maybe multi-dimensional, were fun to watch. The camaraderie was good. I kind of dug it.
Well, I'm glad.
Yeah. What's your grade?
B-.
B- as well.
Well, there you go.
All right.
And
Justin?
for me, a C.
All right. So up next is The Founder. Joe?
No, this is not a reference to DS9.
No.
A few people might get that.
The Roddenberry documentary we never deserved, but
You guys don't know about The Founders yet.
I don't.
Okay.
It's like season 3,
Okay.
I believe.
At some point.
Well, The Founder is a biopic about McDonald's.
Yeah.
Now,
Do
normally,
continue.
normally I would have probably not much interest in this movie. I mean, maybe a little bit, but Michael Keaton is the star.
That's why.
So that's the connection there. And Michael Keaton plays, what's his name, Ray Kroc, who is not the founder of McDonald's, but the guy that basically made McDonald's a franchise. And you've also got Nick Offerman and John Carroll Lynch playing the McDonald's brothers, how they meet up, start this business, get it rolling, and see how it kind of starts off being this nice little hamburger shop and then becoming the thing that it is today. And
I like the word choice there.
oh, no, I'll get a little more specific later. Well, I think that the most obvious positive, which we all know, without even seeing the movie probably, is Keaton.
Yes.
He manages to do so much with this, and you can tell that the director has a lot of faith that you can just give him literally a monologue, which he's staring directly at the camera, addressing you for a good couple minutes, and you're entertained because there's just so much emotion conveyed on every detail of his face. He enunciates his words, everything, and with very little movement. It's pretty awesome. But that's not the whole movie. If it was, it could still be good. It could be interesting. Maybe that's an experiment. But no, we follow him as he's the struggling milkshake salesman. He's trying to sell this milkshake device, machine, and he's not having a lot of luck. He stumbles across the McDonald's brothers, sees potential in it, and really helps the idea grow. And you kind of see the evolution of how it becomes this big franchise and how it kind of changes the man. And I think that's another interesting thing about this movie is that as a character study, it's written very well because you start off the film really kind of sympathizing with him. And by the end of it, he's kind of the villain of the picture. Mm-hmm. But he still seems like a real person and it's very believable, which I thought was interesting. And I thought it was kind of almost a metaphor on what McDonald's has become itself. And I thought it's interesting all the health stuff was left completely out of this movie because I think we all know that.
I was going to say.
And it's conveyed, but you are thinking about it throughout the whole thing. And even this little plot point about taking out the milk from the milkshakes, which was kind of how he started the business, and then they try to do instant milkshakes. I think that's a pretty clear metaphor in and of itself. Mm-hmm. But that dynamic was really good. You get to see how it affects his personal life. And at first, once again, you're sympathetic, but maybe not so much later on. And just the evolution of that character was fantastic. And I also thought that both actors that portrayed the McDonald's brothers and their perspective on it was really good. And you get to learn a little bit more about their story. And that was one, I don't know if I want to say it was a flaw, but as I was watching the film, I was like, there is a whole story, which is a sort of a subsection in flashbacks about how the McDonald's brothers got started, that I think would have been a fascinating movie in and of itself, which I don't know.
I would agree with that.
I think that might have been really interesting, maybe a little more positive perhaps. But this movie is definitely trying to tackle some really complicated ideas about the commercialism and the idea of the American dream and how it can get corrupted. And there's a lot of good stuff there. But I would argue that if it wasn't for the good performances, this is a pretty standard biopic that goes through a lot of the same beats. It's well done. But is it really that groundbreaking? No. If it wasn't for Keaton, it wouldn't be anywhere near as good.
Okay.
But it is good. More interesting than I thought it was going to be. I enjoyed it. What do you guys think?
Well, this is of much interest to me. My first job was at McDonald's. I worked there 3 years. And, as far as most people knew, including myself, Ray Kroc was the founder of McDonald's. And in this picture, we see that he indeed did found something called the McDonald's Corporation.
Yeah.
Yes.
But, obviously there's a lot of backstory there. And obviously over the years, once the internet got started, and, I did learn that Ray Kroc wasn't the creator, but I thought everybody did a good job here. Nick Offerman is so good in this movie. We usually see him with, the big burly mustache, playing either a father or, in Parks and Rec, the gruff, business associate. And I thought he played it very well. And Keaton, of course, is the reason that this movie works. He's great as Ray Kroc, and I agree, Joe. He goes through this transformation where at the beginning of the picture you're like, oh man, downtrodden, you feel so bad for him. You feel bad for his poor wife, being neglected. He's on the road all the time. Yeah. Another great...
Being sad wife again.
Yes, once again. And then as it goes on, you see this guy really is... ruthless in his wheelings and dealings, stepping on people, but always being loyal to a group of people. His secretary, for example, who stays with him, and then we learn in the epilogue that she became the first female president of the company. And so there are people that he is loyal to, but even his wife, obviously, throws her under the bus for Linda Cardellini. It's a very, very interesting movie. I can't say that it's not standard, Joe. You mentioned that word. I do think it's standard for a biopic. How many things can you do with a biopic? I don't know. But I definitely thought that the backstory was very interesting.
The experiment.
Well,
Hashtag social media.
That was experimental, pretending the man was still alive. Yeah, I'll give you that.
Questionable artistic choice. I'll give you that
Here
one.
we at least know that Ray Kroc died at the end
of
the picture. But no, I agree. The backstory with the McDonald's brothers when he takes them out to dinner and gets their story, and I thought that was very well done.
I like
the way they did it with pictures and over top of their talking. And the other thing that drew me right in was the score. It's a sort of basic kind of like road picture score, mostly in scenes when he was driving on the road, but it really kind of like drew me into that world for some reason.
America.
Yeah, it was very America. So I don't know, I liked it. Justin?
So a couple seasons back for us, we reviewed the director of this one's prior film, Saving Mr. Banks, and we got a movie about a story that's almost as compelling, if not potentially even more so than the classic film that's the main drive of it.
Whoa.
The founder, in a stark contrast, is pretty much the closest thing cinematically I can compare to essentially eating a Big Mac. A couple fleeting moments, but mostly a few hours of regret.
Justin's so harsh this show.
I know.
I'll give you guys points on this one. Keaton really is the driving force of this movie. Very charismatic, as one might expect. Gives a lot of depth to the character. The problem is the story and just the direction is so poorly and shoddily handled, it feels like a direct-to-DVD movie. The cinematography is bad. The look of the film is ugly. The score is passable at best, middling and mediocre at worst. But I mean, the story is compelling at times. The exposition portion is probably the most interesting point in the entire movie. The problem is everything that comes after that is nowhere near close to being as interesting. Most of the business stuff, not very interesting. A lot of it's very forced. A lot of it's very tacked on. There are a couple interesting bits here and there, like the transition to instant milkshake is moderately interesting, but it doesn't really grab you. Nothing about this movie really grabbed me. It just felt like a really standard run-of-the-mill biopic that doesn't really have anything breakout to say.
Well, I think there's stuff to say
I thought it
definitely
was pretty
there.
interesting.
It's just that
how it shook out.
I don't know if it dug maybe as deep enough as it could have, but I think there was definitely interesting stuff there.
I mean, I feel like it could have been really interesting, but I think the way it was executed was just not the way to go about it.
I think it was pretty standard in terms of
Instead, he tries to go for like a really by the numbers fable-ish of being too trusting, essentially. And I mean, I get where he's coming from, and I obviously get the fact that this did happen. How accurate it is, I don't know. I'm not a McDonald's expert by any stretch.
I think it's pretty accurate.
Seems accurate.
Yeah.
Or possible.
Though, I mean, with any biopic or anything based on quote-unquote true events, there's always creative license, creative liberties, so...
True.
What is, what isn't, I won't debate. But as a whole, I just thought this was very, very, very average.
Huh.
I liked it a lot.
I thought it was pretty good.
I thought it was. I can't deny that a lot of the basic beats of a biopic are there. These things happen, so it's like you got to hit beat A, B, C, D, and E. And maybe there are more interesting ways to do it. But I found this very interesting. I wasn't bored for a second in this movie. Now, I like fast food. I worked at McDonald's, so okay, maybe I'm the target audience.
I won't go ad hominem, but
I enjoyed everything going into this movie. I agree with what you both kind of said, that the cinematography and the directing is rather basic.
Yeah.
I don't think they're breaking new ground with that as much as they did with certain other aspects of the film. For example, Keaton's great performance. But we've seen a lot of biopics in the 4 years doing this show that there's a great performance, the pick is average. The James Brown one, I think, is the most clear example of that.
Mm-hmm.
But this one, I thought was definitely, a couple of cuts above that. All right, Joe, what is your grade for The Founder?
Well, I thought it was a B.
Okay, it's a B plus for me.
Oh.
C+.
Okay. So finally is Silence. Joe? Yeah, let's quiet down, talk about Scorsese.
It's my review.
That did happen a lot.
It does sum up the movie fairly accurately, ironically enough. But
it really does, Justin. I agree. But yeah, this one is a historical epic of sorts, which Scorsese did direct. Apparently, he's been working on this one for a long time, has been wanting it to be a thing, and he gets to bring his vision. And we do know one thing: if it's a Scorsese movie,
long.
It's going to be long.
Very
because he's
long.
got to go bigger. He's not doing that.
I think we know two things: long and narration.
There is narration.
Yes.
It does open with some silence and narration. Yeah. But basically it takes place in the early 17th century, and of course Christianity is booming. Catholic Church is trying to spread people across the world. And who do they send out? They send out a priest, Liam Neeson, to Japan to try to convert people to Christianity. And, well, there's some resistance to that.
Oopsie.
And, people that are trying to convert are being killed, which you'll see a lot of this rather brutally in this film. A little bit. Which was pretty accurate from what I understand. And Liam Neeson's character has gone missing, and there is a rumor that he has renounced his faith. And these two young priests that I will call Spider-Man and Kylo Ren. Yeah. No, it is Andrew Garfield.
Amazing Spider-Man and Kylo Ren.
Amazing Spider-Man and Kylo Ren would be Adam Driver. They are told by the King in the North previously. What was his name? Justin, the Mance Rayder. They are told by Mance Rayder to go out and find Liam Neeson. This is the one big cluster of just phantasm right here. But it's a Game of Thrones reference. I know you didn't know. It's okay.
Yeah, I did.
But anyway, they are sent out to find him and also try to find out what's going on. And there's kind of a mystery. The whole thing is one big, long mystery, and you get to see a visual representation of this thing we like in film fanatics, which is scenery, love of scenery. Mm-hmm. Japan is beautiful. So there's a lot of that, and there's some beautiful imagery for this film for that. Cinematography is fantastic, and there's some pretty intense stuff that is explored. Not just the violence, but thematically, about faith, religion, which we've seen Scorsese explore before, and I really liked it. Now, there are only two things that I would ask you guys more as questions, because they weren't really problems for me, but I could see the artistic nature of it being iffy for some people. As you joked about, Justin, silence sums up the movie quite well. there are long moments of basically silence in the movie. A lot of quiet reflection, which does add to the atmosphere, but it might make it seem a little sleepy sometimes. And I also ask this other question.
Okay.
How do you feel about the two young actors? Are they up to the task? Because I think that Garfield is a very good actor, but the accent is questionable.
Okay.
Now, but all that being said, I really did like it. I really did. I thought it was
Okay.
quite awesome, but I don't know. I got pretty into it, but I could see the length and the quiet.
I guess to start this one off, I think there's a point with any sort of name director that they sort of decide to go against the grain of what they're known for and try to do something a bit more experimental.
It's true.
And I feel like when they get to that point, it's either going to be a very love it movie to some and hate it movie to others.
It's true.
Honestly, if someone said I despise silence, I would not hold it against them.
I could
because-
see that. I could see it.
Or it goes Shyamalan direction and everyone hates it.
Yeah.
Or that too.
Yeah.
As we discussed, there's a director with
What
a
happened,
mark
man?
that moved off of what he's known for and everyone hated it.
That's true.
As we discussed.
Yeah. Sometimes you're good at what you're good at, and
Yes.
that's it.
Yes. But no, getting to the meat of this, silence is essentially Scorsese's love letter to Kurosawa, and I think there are moments in this movie that really do shine in that. There's, I think, really one of the strongest aspects this movie has going for it is really in the editing. I think he has a very good idea of where to cut, how to cut, and what's going to let it shine. Kurosawa, as a filmmaker, was very much action oriented, so I think for a lot of this movie, silence is important to sort of hit home that aspect. And I think he does, I'd say about 80% of the time, justice to that. I think there are a few times he doesn't quite have the style down pat, but he makes it work. It's kind of a hybrid, but for the most part it works.
It's true.
I won't deny the length does weigh on you after a bit.
Yeah. It does.
It's not necessarily the fault of Andrew Garfield, who for the most part I've always liked. Driver, I can't say the same for, but I
He's fine.
just don't get what people see in him. I never have. I doubt I ever will. And it's not necessarily that he does a bad job here. They actually,
He's fine. He's
for
fine.
for the amount of time that he has in the movie to avoid giving details, he makes it work.
Yeah.
Accents, we've seen far worse on the show. Does Garfield crack here and there? Yes. Is it Mac worthy? No.
No, it's not that bad.
No.
nothing's Mac.
It's yeah.
I didn't think it was
Never gonna be
terrible.
Mac.
I thought it was...
Or Costner.
Well, Costner's no accent.
Cruise, sir, Cruise.
Which one?
Far and away.
He wasn't Irish.
Easily the worst Irish
That
accent
was
I've
pretty
ever
bad.
heard.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
But Costner was just American. He wasn't. If he was trying to give an accent, there was no effort at all. So I don't. Anyway, it's true, man.
I know. That's fine.
But Garfield did a better accent
man.
than Costner. I
Oh,
think.
for sure.
Considerably. Yes.
For sure.
Yes. That's there's no contest there.
Okay. So what did Dan think about it?
All right, I didn't know if Justin was
What do you
done.
think, Dan?
But no, I mean, it's a movie I respect. I don't think it's one I have any real great urge to go back and watch, probably for not a couple years, but I do respect it for what it is.
Respect is an interesting word. Do you have respect for this movie, Dan?
Curious.
Yeah,
Okay.
I do have respect for this movie.
Okay.
I would say it was the best movie on the show today.
What?
Oh my.
Now-
More than Split?
Well,
Or the
Founder.
Founder.
Founder was my
Hey.
personal.
Hey.
I got the most enjoyment out of the Founder.
Less Big Macs in Japan back in the day.
That is true. That is true.
They made Big Macs out of people.
Yeah, they
Oopsie.
did a lot of things out of
I'm
people.
surprised that wouldn't be a big aversion to you, man. They got some pretty intense violence in this.
There's some intense violence. There is. It's a little bit gross. The cutting off of the heads I can do without. But a lot of it was done rather artfully.
Oh.
When you are Scorsese, you tend to do that. My problem with the length of this movie,
Okay.
in disagreement with Justin, is in the editing. I don't think this movie's edited properly. He needed to trim a lot of scenes by just a hair here, a hair there. I don't think it's overly long, but he definitely lingered on some shots that I'm like, okay, you got to go to the next scene, dude.
To be fair, that is something Kurosawa did a lot of the time.
I was gonna say that's
You have a shot of the guy
what
on the
he was
street.
trying to do.
He's just moving around the water. It's pretty. let's absorb the scene. That
All right, well, if that's
Give context to the atmosphere.
if that's his
thing.
his love letter to Kurosawa, okay. Personally, if the movie's already 240, you gotta snip it a little bit somewhere.
All right.
That's where I would have done it. But I think Garfield did a great job. I agree maybe the accent isn't 100%, but you gotta keep in mind, Andrew Garfield, first of all, is British. So not only does he do American accents very well, but now in this he's doing, the I don't even know what area.
I think he's supposed to be Italian.
Italian,
Yes.
okay. That would make sense.
Catholic Church, yeah.
Yeah, Catholic Church. So I mean, he's sort of making sure he drops the English accent and adopts this other accent. It's hard. I mean, look, I thought he did a pretty good job.
No,
It's not Hacksaw Ridge, but
no, I think the performance is quite good.
Yeah.
But the accent I thought was the weakest part of it.
Good or bad at Hacksaw Ridge? What was that in reference to?
well, I mean, like consistent accent.
Oh,
Yeah, I thought his
performance
Ridge was great.
There.
Driver, I didn't
What is the deal with
think.
him?
Well, I like him except for his popular roles, I guess, because I hate the Showgirls, because I hate Lena Dunham. I didn't really like him as Kylo Ren. I like
no one did,
I
but-
like the indie Adam Driver.
Where he's himself.
That does
Where he's basically
where he's
hipster,
basically
yeah.
himself.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's more in his wheelhouse there. I was surprised to see him in this movie.
Like you think,
to be honest.
Okay, Liam Neeson,
But-
get it. Andrew
Yeah,
Garfield,
yeah.
sure. Adam Driver.
But look, you know what?
he's-
Scorsese has done this. He did, Jonah Hill in Wolf of Wall Street. I know Jonah Hill had Moneyball under his belt, but Jonah Hill is largely a comedic actor.
Yeah.
Much like Adam Driver. So, all right, we'll, mix it up a little bit.
All right.
I'm Scorsese. I'm 80, whatever. I'm gonna, be hip and have Adam Driver in the movie.
Yeah.
He didn't do a good job.
Wow.
But everybody else was great. I loved the that horrible guy. Is that the guy from Phantasm? The guy that was in charge of cutting off everybody's heads?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, he was great.
No, yeah.
I liked him. I could have used a translator sometimes. This is a movie where if I ever do watch it again, I
Subs on.
gonna put the subs on. Like you have to with this movie.
Even with the English parts.
Even with like Neeson sometimes.
His narration's very well dubbed.
Yes, very very well dubbed. But no, this is a great Scorsese movie. It is better than I would say a lot of his recent output. You guys know I didn't really like Wolf of Wall Street that much, and some of his other ones, but I liked it a lot.
Good.
A little long,
A little long.
a little
Definitely
gory. The gore was necessary
I was gonna say
for the most part.
I would say more disturbing than gory, but
Yeah, it's going for kind of
All
creepy.
right, well that's fine.
creepy
But
imagery.
I mean, don't get me wrong, definitely visceral and
visceral.
Visceral. Ooh, good word.
But you got the Green Inferno where they're
Oh yeah,
cannibalizing people, and it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah, okay. That,
clearly for shock value. I don't know. I mean, look, Scorsese's known for violence.
Yes.
I wouldn't say this was for shock value. I think this was
No.
just for
Point for-
artistic value.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And so, in that respect, I can certainly appreciate it more. All right, well, what's your grade then for Silence?
I think it's a great movie. I leave with an A.
Okay, A- for me.
Okay.
Justin?
B+ with an asterisk.
Asterisk.
I kind of want to give this movie a second opinion at some point. I don't know if it's going to be before Oscar season or in like a year or two, but I do kind of want to give this another go around at some point to really give it the benefit of the doubt.
I could watch it again. For
Yeah,
sure.
I would watch it again.
It was pretty good.
Yeah.
It was really good.
One of those, like, does it still hold up on a repeat viewing kind of situations?
I think it's one of those movies that could definitely benefit from repeat viewing. Sometime.
Yeah.
Certainly.
It's
I agree.
It's definitely one to take in atmospherically and think about. A lot of good stuff there.
Yeah, definitely.
Can we justify that over a high A though?
Definitely better than the
Sorry, I
high.
couldn't help myself.
It's,
Well, high A is just the dumbest. I mean, it just never made any sense.
Another way.
Yeah. All right. So that's gonna do it for the Joe Show. Good job on the 4 films.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I had to give it some time to think, and that's a lot.
But we did it.
We did it.
Yeah.
And I hope that I made those some good conversations.
Yes. And more Oscar nominees still to come. We'll be doing Lion here coming up in the next few weeks. possibly Jackie, and maybe some other ones. So keep that in mind, as well as some of the new releases. You can check out our Facebook group, Film Fanatics with an exclamation point. Subscribe to the Twitter feed, or subscribe to the channel here on YouTube, or check out the Twitter feed at Film Fanatics Pod. And thanks so much for listening. We'll see you back here next time.